right, so building island resilience against climate change in Guam. This is Guam. It's a beautiful place, like all of our other Pacific islands. And in the native language of the land, Chamorro, Guam is called Guahan, which means we have. Unfortunately, we're frequently hearing the phrase, we used to have. We used to have the cocoa bird, the Guam morel, the state bird of the island. We used to have the seahit, the Marianas kingfisher. We used to have the fanihi, the Marianas fruit bat, the flying fox, as it's called in some other areas. Right now, we still have some fish. We still have some very beautiful coral reefs. But many of them are starting to look like this, ugly, mostly dead, covered in sediment and algae. We still have some native forests, but their expanses are shrinking due to wildland arson fires. But as awareness grows of these environmental issues, more members of our community are taking action to revive their island ecosystems to ensure they never have to say, we used to have trees, we used to have fish, we used to have coral reefs. Coral reefs protect us and they sustain us. They protect us from wave action during storms. They feed our people. And quite literally, they're the foundations of our island. This is a picture of the northern half of Guam, which is made up of limestone or old coral growth. And coral reefs are part of a watershed ecosystem. Here in Hawaii, we call them ahupua'a. And these are the divides, the catchment areas, which are divides between the mountains where rainwater collects into streams and tributaries, flows through the land, and exits the watershed onto the coral reefs below as discharge. Now, there's a lot of local stressors that are affecting the health of these ecosystems. Local stressors such as poor land use development practices, additions of impervious surfaces like roads and parking lots, which prevent rainwater from recharging the groundwater. Invasive feral ungulates like pigs, deer, sheep, goats. Erosion and sedimentation on reefs. And the overharvesting of herbivorous fish like uhu or parrotfish, which are like the lawnmowers of the sea that graze on algae on the reefs. Now here's the thing. Island communities must tackle these local stressors in order to be resilient against the global stressors like climate change and sea level rise. So that's where our community effort, the Humatak Project, comes in. It's named after a southwest village in Guam. And it's a culturally significant site for the Marianas because according to Chamorro folklore, this is where human creation took place. And the mission of the Humatak Project is this. Starting at Fua Bay, where our ancestors tell us civilization began, we are committed to reviving the once fruitful watersheds, vibrant coral reefs, and abundant fisheries of Guam. In the early 2000s, fishermen in the village noticed that they weren't catching the same size and quality of fish as they used to. So they reached out to their village mayor, who in turn reached out to the University of Guam, and groups got together to investigate what was going on in this village. And what they found was that this road, 26 years ago, was torn down, rebuilt, and expanded. And the government agencies that were responsible for carrying out the construction failed to implement an environmental safety plan that would protect the adjacent ecosystems. So large mounds of sediment were left uncovered. When heavy rains came, it flushed that sediment into the ocean, smothering and killing large expanses of coral reefs in a short period of time. So today, the erosion problem is exacerbated by arson fires set by deer poachers. They set these fires to make it easier for them to catch deer. 2 or 3 days after a rain, nice, soft, nutritious shoots of grass start coming up. The deer are attracted to them, and since they're in wide open spaces, bang, they become easy targets for those deer poachers. We don't call them hunters because they're cheating. This is Fua Bay on a nice sunny day before a nice sunny calm day. But after a rain event, tons of sediment flush into the bay and it turns to chocolate milk. Here's a peek inside of the river. That wall behind me is about twice my height, so about 12 feet tall. And this is just to show how high the water gets when the flash flood starts. The water comes screaming around those bends, ripping off 30-old coconut trees from the side of the riverbank, and flushes all of that along with 1,800,000 kilograms of sediment into the bay each year. And that's the equivalent of about 660 large pickup truck loads, which get caked on in the bay below. Now what we're doing about that are things like watershed management, planting trees to reforest eroding hillsides. We use these devices called sediment filter socks, which are mesh stockings that you fill with compost or mulch. Place it perpendicular to the flow of water to slow down water velocity and capture sediments. You see this often around construction sites here on Oahu and around drainages. So we identified eroding hillsides like this one, installed sediment filter socks and planted trees in between. And less than a year later, we were really hopeful when we saw these areas almost completely revegetated. In addition, the Humatak Project is doing educational outreach in classrooms, teaching students about the importance of coral reefs and watersheds. We have frequent community meetings to update people in the village about what's going on, and a lot of them take charge and help with our initiatives. And we also have these really cool field trips that we call Humatak Watershed Adventures, where we take bus loads of community members from the top of the watershed to see sources of erosion. On this day, there was a fire that happened just the week before. We pause in the middle of the watershed and talk about the importance of managing stormwater runoff. And finally, we hike down to the bottom of the bay, where we can see all of these things connect. And as part of my dissertation research, this is where the science comes in to measure the effectiveness of our tree plantings and our sediment filter socks to see how much sediment we're actually accumulating. And eventually we'll give these recommendations back to the community and to the government to say, this is how effective a tree is or how effective sediment socks are. If you scale up, then we can protect the island at a larger scale. So that's what the Humatak Project is doing, and I'd like to share with you some of the future scenarios of coral reefs based on climate change. This was a study that was published out of the Kewalo Marine Laboratory. And on the y-axis is live coral cover. The x-axis is the year. So back in the 1900s, we saw a worldwide coral reef cover of about 80%. When this study was published in 2009, it had already dipped below 40%. And what this red line, this trajectory shows is that we're set to lose all of our coral reefs before the end of the century at the current levels of climate change. The current levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. But at the projected levels of greenhouse gas emission increases, we're probably going to see the loss of coral reefs even sooner. If we continue to do our local remediation efforts, doing things like watershed management, we're going to buy ourselves a little time, but we're still going to lose all the coral reefs maybe sometime a little after the end of the century. But here's the hopeful message. If we can do both our efforts to build island resiliency on the local level, and we can get a global change in our carbon emissions, then we can see our coral reefs survive into the future. And I think that's very possible, because every day more people like you are listening to what's going on. They're heeding the call to action, and we have some very strong voices in the Pacific telling everybody else how this is affecting us and how climate change is not stopping here, but it's coming for them too, just like Dr. Morris said a few minutes ago. And again, we are hopeful. Hopeful just like when a baby cocoa bird hatches, that species can continue. We have to protect that hope, like a mother cocoa bird would protect her offspring. We have to, so that we can continue to have a Guahan, and we can continue to have all of our Pacific Islands. Please like our page on Facebook. Thank you to all of our partners, and there's some contact information if you have questions later. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Austin. His message is, we do not have to be helpless in the face of climate change.